When the only constant in life is change, you need to be ready. This is the Man-Made Survival Show.
Welcome back, everybody. My name is Jose Prado of Man-Made Survival, and I'm so glad to finally be back here with you, bringing you the news, bringing you the analysis, and see how everything comes together and everything is related to preparedness. Because, I've been gone for 2 months because, as you know, my dad got ill. And that, pretty much took me away from everything to be with him in the hospital. And, a lot of things have been happening ever since, the last time I made a podcast. And the most recent one that has happened is the hack of the pipeline. And now today, as I'm recording this podcast, now they're talking about a hack with the meat packaging place. So those events really put the final nail in the coffin that proves that preparedness should be part of the American society. And what I want to do with this community of preppers is that I want to make sure that it becomes part of the culture, to the heart of it. Because every time something like this happens, people panic. We saw it with the pandemic. We saw it with the food shortages. We saw what happened in Texas. Now what would happen with the gas station. And now that this news is out with the meat, we're going to see how people are going to react to it. But what happened with the gas stations and the gas being out really proves that people do not, since they don't understand preparedness, they'll do whatever it takes for them to feel safe. And they'll do things that are not recommended, such as using whatever container they can find, such as plastic bags and other things that are not approved for gasoline, and just use it because, they just don't know any better. We saw the exact same thing when the pandemic first broke out. First we saw it in other places, in other countries, and people were laughing that people in Asia were using, feminine pads. They were using oranges. They were using plastic bottles. They were using all these things. And then when the pandemic came to America, people were pretty much doing the same thing. And now that this pipeline got hacked, last month, people were using plastic bags, totes, whatever they can find. And there was one accident that I saw where a person that had just left the gas station had used unapproved gas containers, and their car caught on fire. So preparedness is essential for everyday life, for everybody all throughout the country, because when something like this happens, you have to know exactly what to do. This is the reason why I say that preparedness should not be about someone's opinion. And everything that has been happening proves that. It's proving that right now. And that's why here in this podcast, I teach you, the foundations of preparedness, science-backed. Everything that we do for preparedness has a scientific reason why we do it. And that's exactly what we're going to be getting, in this podcast today. And as you know, the way that I do podcasts is that I have all this information that I got to give you. For me, it's one long podcast. For you, it's going to be divided into different episodes. So I encourage you to stay all the way to the end, listen to all this information, but most importantly, to actually act on it instead of, just gathering information and not doing anything about it. Because, it's not going to do you any good if you know what's happening, but you don't do anything about it. All right. So before I continue with everything, I do want to mention, and I do want to say thank you to everybody that sent me messages asking about my dad, how he was doing, how I was doing, when I was going to come back, because you guys missed my analysis and the detailed podcast that I give you with all this information. And, I really do appreciate each and every one of you who sent me those messages and asked how we were doing. And thankfully, my dad is doing a lot better now. We're back at home, and he should be recovering, to a full cure now. So I really do want to thank the medical community. I want to thank the doctors, the nurses, the hospital that took care of my dad. I do want to say that, that goes to show even more that the current medical system is very necessary for American life. It's one of the four parts of the supply chain, as I describe it in this podcast, which is food, water, power, and the medical system. And even though, there's some grievances and stuff like that some people feel towards it because of the prices and everything else, it proved to me at least one more time that although, it's not a perfect system, it is there. And because of it, a lot more people are alive thanks to it. Rather than if it wasn't there, a lot more people would be dead. And that's the report that I gave you when I did the EMP podcast, months ago. So again, I want to thank everybody from doctors to nurses to the hospital to the community of preppers who asked how we were doing. All right, so before I get into the podcast, I also want to mention something. In the 2 months that I was out, I didn't just sit there and lost time. I finished the book that I had been starting writing since last year. I finally had all the time in the world to finish it, and it's now finally complete. We're at the last stage now where we have to get, a cover for it. We have to get somebody to professionally do the audiobook. We got to get it printed, and, all the other things that are involved in all of that. And I will let you guys know once we have all of that finished, and we'll let you know how much it's going to cost. And I would really appreciate it if you can consider buying the book to support this podcast. I really do think that this book is going to help you. It's going to set the foundations as I've been teaching them here. And it's going to help each and every one of you create your alliance, stocking up and knowing why you do the things you do. So I'll let you know when that comes out, and I'll do the announcement for the title and everything else.
The Man-Made Survival Show.